This is Part 3, Episode 11. Thick white mist spread outwards from the top of the mountain. However, Lin Dong's eyes were tightly locked onto the figure, who was awkwardly walking out of the white mist with heavy footsteps. The figure was fairly muscular, and his black skin made him look exactly like a steel tower. Merely standing there made others feel a pressuring aura that caused one's breathing to turn ragged. Looking at this figure, his face looked pretty dull. However, upon closer inspection, one would realize that this face actually vaguely resembled Lin Dong. The atmosphere on the mountain peak seemed to have frozen, while Lin Dong blankly stared at the sturdy figure standing at the edge of the cliff. Moments later, he finally opened his somewhat dry mouth and said, "Little Flame." When that black steel tower-like figure heard that name, its originally dull and black eyes suddenly lit up. Following which, he unblinkingly stared at Lin Dong, scratching his head as if he was trying to say something. However, in the end, only the sound of exhaling came out. Nonetheless, Lin Dong still managed to clearly witness the sudden surge of enthusiasm in his eyes. Finally left its beast form, little Martin smiled and said, somewhat surprised as it stared at the little flame, who had now completely broken away from its beast form. Lin Dong stared curiously at little flame's body, before he asked, why can't little flame speak yet? Even though he currently possesses an intellect that would not lose out to humans, it would take time for him to adapt before he can speak. Little Martin rolled its eyes. Lin Dong was delighted as he floated forward and stood right next to Little Flame. Standing beside Little Flame, his head only managed to reach the latter's waist. Meanwhile, the pressure and formidable aura emerging from Little Flame's body caused his breathing to turn slightly ragged. Mast. Little Flame stared at Lin Dong as a silly grin revealed itself. Following which, it kneeled down before an extremely deep yet raw voice clumsily emerged from his lips. Master my ass. When Lin Dong saw this, he chose to gently chide Little Flame as he lightly patted Little Flame's steel-like head. In future, you shall be called Lin Yang. Since I was the one who brought you up, call me Big Brother. Little Flame scratched his head. Now that it possessed genuine intellect, it could clearly detect the heartfelt joy within Lin Dong's words and expression. Immediately, a slightly hideous smile appeared on his dull face as he solemnly nodded his head. Bye, Big Brother. Lin Dong was all smiles as he pointed at the tiny rider on his shoulders and said, this is your second brother. Little Martin, who was originally folding its arms and enjoying the show, was stunned by Lin Dong's sudden words. Immediately, all the hair on its body stood up as a high-pitched voice sounded out, get lost, who is the second brother of this stupid tiger? How dare a mere kid like you claim to be the big brother? You actually dare to rank yourself above this Grandpa Martin? Are you tired of living? Even though you proclaim yourself to be Grandpa Martin, I know that in the Celestial Demon Martin clan, your age should be about the same as mine. Lin Dong casually said. After being together for so many years, he knew little Martin very well. This fellow liked to exaggerate his accomplishments and experiences. However, some of its actions would occasionally reveal the truth. Even though Lin Dong did not deny that little Martin had lived for a long time, Celestial Demon Martins had a long lifespan. Therefore, within their clan, someone like little Martin was perhaps only a teenager. Second brother. Nonetheless, Little Flame took no notice of little Martin's vigorous resistance. In his heart, he felt absolute loyalty and kinship to Lin Dong, who had raised him since he was a tiger cub. Therefore, Little Flame would not object to anything Lin Dong said. Little Martin, who was objecting to Lin Dong's arrangement in a shrilly voice, turned silent after Little Flame spoke. Meanwhile, a special glint seemed to flash across its normally crafty eyes. Two idiots. Little Martin pursed its lips before it viciously swore. However, surprisingly, it did not speak anymore. Lin Dong smiled. From a certain perspective, the three of them had quite a deep bond. To Little Flame, Lin Dong was perhaps like a master and a father, whereas for little Martin, Lin Dong was a tutor and a friend. The three of them had relied on one another since their time at Qingyang Town, and had experienced numerous trials together before they finally charged out of the Great Yang Empire. Furthermore, Lin Dong believed that this was not the end for them. In future, there would eventually be legendary tales belonging to them. Put on some clothes first, Little Flame. Lin Dong retrieved a fairly large black robe from his chinkuan bag, before tossing it over to Little Flame. The latter quickly caught it, and even though he was somewhat clumsy, he eventually managed to put on the black robe. After wearing his clothes, Little Flame stood beside Lin Dong like a steel tower. Its tall and powerful body had a strong deterring effect. In fact, even the blood soul puppet was slightly lacking in comparison. Of course, based on Little Flame's current strength, even the blood soul puppet would have difficulties facing him. After he successfully survived a Nirvana tribulation, Little Flame had advanced to the 1 Yuan Nirvana stage. In fact, this speed was considerably faster than Lin Dong. Although it was in part due to the heavenly devil tiger bone, his progress would still make many envious. "Kid, where do you plan to go next?" Little Martin lazily asked. Even though it did not object to Little Flame calling it second brother, it was practically impossible for this prideful fellow to call Lin Dong big brother. Of course we are going to open that mysterious ancient treasure trove." The corners of Lin Dong's mouth gently lifted. In another 10 days, it would be the perfect time to unlock the mysterious ancient treasure trove. How could he possibly miss this opportunity? "I am afraid the Devil Cliff Empire will be there already," Little Martin slyly smiled as it said. "Devil Cliff Empire? Do I still need to fear them?" Lin Dong chuckled. Now that Little Flame had successfully survived a Nirvana tribulation, Lin Dong had 2 powerful companions who could rival a 1 Yuan Nirvana stage practitioner. This lineup would be considered quite powerful even among the high-rank empires. Hence, even though it would still be a stretch for him to wipe out the Devil Cliff Empire, if they dared to mess with him, Lin Dong would show them exactly what a steel board was. The current him no longer feared the Devil Cliff Empire. In fact, he was even a little eager to meet them again. He could already imagine how interesting Shixian's expression would be. Though Little Flame has survived a Nirvana tribulation, it has not adapted to this body, and it will take some time before he can fight against those powerful practitioners. However, since this stupid tiger has addressed me as second brother, Grandpa Martin will not let you down. Little Martin waved its claws as a black glowing scroll appeared in its hands before it tossed it towards Little Flame. This martial arts is a treasure of the Heavenly Devil Tiger clan, the Heavenly Devil God transformation. This cannot be compared to the garbage I previously gave to the mighty earth-splitting tiger. If you successfully master it, you will be able to obtain a place for yourself even in Demon City. Little Flame stretched out his palm and grabbed the glowing tube. A peculiar black glow surrounded the glowing tube, while a deep tiger roar could be faintly heard. Obviously, it was no ordinary object. Nonetheless, even though Little Flame fancied this item, he did not take it immediately. Instead, he instinctively turned towards Lin Dong. "It's rare for second brother to be so generous, so just accept it. He has never given me something so good before." Lin Dong smiled as he said. "Most of the things I have are for demonic beast cultivation, and you cannot use them. Furthermore, you cannot become a truly powerful practitioner by relying on others." Little Martin stretched, a playful glint flashing across its eyes as it said, "However, if you are willing to swap positions, perhaps I will give you something good." Lin Dong grinned. This fellow was truly persistent about titles. Looks like it was exactly as he had predicted. This fellow was not a senior figure in the Celestial Demon Martin clan at all. Right now, Little Flame still lacks a weapon. When we enter the mysterious ancient treasure trove, let's see if we can find him a heavenly soul treasure. Lin Dong ignored Little Martin as he turned to Little Flame and said, "Weapon? I have one." When he heard Lin Dong's words, Little Flame foolishly grinned. Promptly, he reached out with his large hand as a black glow quickly accumulated in his palm, transforming into a black pole that was thicker than Lin Dong's thigh. It was hard to tell what material that pole made of. Upon closer inspection, it seemed as if there were layers of black scales scattered across the pole. Meanwhile, the head of the pole was as sharp as a spear and it looked like an open snake's mouth. With sharp fangs hidden within, it gave off a cold and menacing glint. This was a fairly unique snake pole. This should be a Destiny Soul treasure that Little Flame refined using his cut-off tail. I never expected that he would possess this ability after surviving a single Nirvana tribulation. Typically speaking, only demonic beasts that have survived more than 3 Nirvana tribulations possess the ability to refine soul treasures from a part of their body. Little Martin exclaimed in shock. These Destiny Soul treasures will become increasingly powerful as their strength increases. It is practically a growth-type soul treasure. Shock filled Lin Dong's face. He could feel an exceedingly great pressure from the pitch-black snake pole. In fact, this sensation did not lose out to his heavy prison peak, or his heavenly crocodile bone spear. Furthermore, the raw ingredients used to refine this snake pole was originally a part of Little Flame's body. Therefore, it would be very natural to use, allowing it to be extremely powerful. Looks like we can forget about getting you a weapon. Oh well, it's time to make a move. I am curious to find out what the Devil Cliff Empire can do to me now. Lin Dong smiled as he spread out his hands. Following which, he immediately turned around and headed towards the outskirts of the mountain range. Behind him, Little Flame's body flashed and quickly followed like a bodyguard. As there were still 10 days till the opening of the mysterious ancient treasure trove, Lin Dong and gang were not overly hurried like before. Furthermore, he wanted to give Little Flame time to adjust to his new body, hence their speed slowed significantly. All in all, they spent 3 to 4 days on the road before they finally arrived at the most crowded area in the ancient lands, the ancient palace. Even though it was called a palace, what stood there was a large and spacious city. It was said that in the past, this was the headquarters of a super sect, thus, the scale of this city was truly breathtaking. Furthermore, this was the place to unlock the mysterious ancient treasure trove. Therefore, nearly every decent empire in the northwest region had rushed here. As such, the atmosphere in the city could not be described by mere words. Lin Dong and his party landed on a mountain peak outside the ancient palace. When they lifted their heads and saw the swarms of black bobbing figures flying across the sky, even with their mental fortitude, they involuntarily sucked in a breath of cold air. Had the ancient palace attracted nearly 60 to 70% of the entire population in the northwest region? The allure of the mysterious ancient treasure trove is truly terrifying. There are so many empires. Lin Dong was shocked as he stared at this sight. This city was extremely huge, and Yang City paled in comparison. However, it still gave the feel of being packed with people, and there were many presences even in the city outskirts plus the surrounding forests. Evidently, the number of people here had far exceeded the city's capacity. Little Flame's muscular body stood behind Lin Dong like a black metal tower. An instinctive vigilant and fearsome glint flashed within his deep black eyes as they scanned the passing crowd. Even though he had left his beast form, that habits he was born with were evidently not going to be erased so easily. Let's go, Little Flame. Time to enter the city. Lin Dong smiled before he promptly leapt off the mountain cliff and headed for the massive ancient palace. Behind Lin Dong, Little Flame nodded his head as he quickly followed behind. Over the past few days, he had already started to cultivate the heavenly devil god transformation that Little Martin had given to him. Therefore, he had gradually gained increased mastery over his body and his footsteps were extreme precise. Every step was of the same distance, and he was never more than 10 feet away from Lin Dong. Within this radius, he had absolute confidence that he could handle anything situation that arose. Even if they encountered a 1 Yuan Nirvana stage practitioner, no harm would befall Lin Dong under his watch. The ancient palace was extremely huge, and had a total of 8 doors. However, there was still a large number of people flooding in. As he watched the long queue, Lin Dong naturally did not want to anger the crowd. Hence, Little Flame and him could only silently follow behind. In a few days, we will be able to open the ancient treasure trove. I've heard that this treasure trove is truly remarkable, and it was actually left behind by a super sect. If we can obtain a little something from it, we can definitely stand out in the ancient battlefield. Oh please, do you think it is going to be so easy? Take a look at the number of people who are attracted by this ancient treasure trove. There are even countless high-rank empires here as well. If you are not capable, don't even dream about those treasures. Furthermore, don't think that these are all the competitors you will face. Who knows if there are others lurking in the dark? Disregarding ourselves, perhaps even powerful empires like the Devil Cliff Empire and Prehistoric Empire, whom have also obtained the mysterious ancient key, will not dare to guarantee that they will return with a full haul. While Lin Dong quietly stood in the queue, he furrowed his brows when he heard the idle talk around him. It seems like this trip to the mysterious ancient treasure trove was going to be an arduous journey. Right now, the 3 empires who have a mysterious ancient key, the Devil Cliff Empire, Prehistoric Empire and Death Valley Empire, have already arrived at the ancient palace. However, it is said that the individual who has the final key, Lin Dong, has yet to show up. I wonder if that kid will dare to show up. Have you seen the posters on the wall? The Devil Cliff Empire has raised the bounty on his head to 1 million Nirvana pills. Furthermore, he possesses a mysterious ancient key. He will surely be in a dire situation once he shows his face. That fellow is truly unfortunate. Like the saying goes, an innocent man will get in trouble because of his fortune. Since he dared to snatch the mysterious ancient key without the backing of a high-rank empire, isn't he courting death? Lin Dong, who was leisurely eavesdropping on the conversations, was suddenly stunned. Evidently, he had never expected that the topic would turn to him. Immediately, he slightly narrowed his eyes as he looked towards the city wall. Sure enough, he saw that there was indeed a bounty poster there. Moreover, there was even a picture of him. 1 million Nirvana pills. It seems like the Devil Cliff Empire really has it out for me. When Lin Dong saw the reward offered, his lips gently curled as he muttered to himself. While Lin Dong muttered to himself, the atmosphere surrounding him suddenly froze. Immediately, all the chattering around him mysteriously vanished, before Lin Dong felt several people turn to stare at him. Promptly, their expressions changed from shock to excitement. It seems that we have been recognized. Lin Dong stroked his face and muttered to himself, while everyone slowly distanced themselves. That fellow is Lin Dong. Amidst the frenzied looks, a shocked voice suddenly rang out. Promptly, several pairs of eyes outside the city wall turned heated. Grab that kid, and we can obtain 1 million Nirvana pills plus a mysterious ancient key. A few deep growls filled with greed sounded out. Lin Dong furrowed his brows as he watched. It seems like the Devil Cliff Empire had truly caused much trouble for him. Get lost. Just as the crowds jostled, a group of men finally walked out before they stared coldly at Lin Dong. It is the men from the Desert Empire, a high-rank empire. It is reputed that their head has advanced to the Nirvana stage and is quite powerful. As that group of men walked out, a chorus sounded out in the crowd. It seemed like this so-called Desert Empire was fairly famous. Lin Dong, I do not need to capture you for the Nirvana pills. As long as you hand over the mysterious ancient key, I will let you go. How about it? The Nirvana stage practitioner from the Desert Empire stared at Lin Dong, before he stretched out his palm and said. After he spoke, the several dozen men behind him immediately put on a threatening expression. Meanwhile, formidable yuan power shockwaves extended out from their bodies with the aim of intimidating Lin Dong. Lin Dong had a slightly peculiar expression as he glanced at that group of men, before he shook his head helplessly. Following which, he chose to ignore them as he directly headed for the city. When they saw Lin Dong completely disregarding them, the Nirvana stage Desert Empire practitioners' eyes instantly turned ice cold. In the next instance, a venomous glint flashed across his eyes, before he coated his fist with potent yuan power and punched at Lin Dong's head. Bang! However, in the face of such a powerful attack, Lin Dong's footsteps were not disrupted at all. As he gently waved his palm, a crisp slap suddenly sounded out outside of the city. The instant that slap sounded out, a blood-red palm print immediately appeared on the Nirvana stage practitioner's face. Instantly, a powerful force blew him away, as he vomited out a mouthful of fresh blood. The chaotic city entrance instantly lapsed into silence. As the crowd stared at the sorry figure of the half-dead Nirvana stage practitioner lying on the ground, everyone stealthily sucked in breath of cold air. Most of them had finally regained their wits after being temporarily overwhelmed by the huge reward. After all, the man standing before them had successfully escaped from the Devil Cliff Empire's Shishien. If you want the mysterious ancient key in my possession, someone of his caliber had better not step up. I will not be so merciful next time. Lin Dong did not even glance at the Nirvana stage practitioner that he had swatted away, as he glanced at his surroundings and warned. When they heard his words, several people's hearts shuddered and none of them dared to speak up. Of course, the ancient palace had already attracted a huge crowd and there were several powerful practitioners mixed in. Therefore, some obscure glances were secretly cast towards Lin Dong. It seems like many of them were curious to find out more about the man, who had recently been the center of attention. Lin Dong naturally detected those powerful yet obscure stares. Immediately, his eyes narrowed. Behind him, Little Flame, who had yet to make a move, suddenly took a step forward. Instantly, a peculiar shockwave extended from his foot, following which, some groaning noises secretly sounded out, and somewhat shocked gazes were cast at the Little Flame standing behind Lin Dong. Let's go. I have sensed the location of the other 3 mysterious ancient keys, and they should also have detected me as well. The Devil Cliff Empire should be in there too. All right then, I am curious to find out what they can do to me. Lin Dong casually glanced at the hidden spots surrounding him. Without further ado, he lifted his head and headed for the inner regions of the ancient palace. There, he could detect the presence of 3 of mysterious ancient keys. As his words faded, Lin Dong widened his footsteps as he directly walked into the city and headed towards the location of the 3 other mysterious ancient keys. This time around, he was going to directly confront the Devil Cliff Empire. The city known as Ancient Palace was extremely huge and magnificent. In fact, as Lin Dong walked towards it, the feeling of grandeur from the city intensified to the limit. Crowds traveled along the spacious streets, while the buzz from the crowds gathered together before they shot into the sky and extended across the city. After walking into the city, Lin Dong and Little Flame make any pit stops. Instead, they headed directly for the center of the city. At the center of the city was an extremely magnificent palace, and it was the most prominent building in the city. If one stood on top of it, one would be able to look over the entire city. However, in contrast to other cities, the center of this city seemed fairly serene. Of course, this unique place was forbidden to most people from ordinary empires, and only Nirvana stage practitioners from high-rank empires had the qualifications to enter, while the rest of them could only stare longingly from afar. Perhaps, because it was somewhat linked to the mysterious ancient key, in the middle of the Grand Palace, Lin Dong could faintly feel 3 faint vibrations. Evidently, they were the 3 other factions who had obtained the mysterious ancient key, the Death Valley Empire, Prehistoric Empire, and Devil Cliff Empire. Of course, this connection went both ways. Given the ability of the leaders of these 3 empires, when he sensed them, they should have also detected the mysterious ancient key in his possession as well. Within this palace was a large golden hall. The interior of the large hall was extremely spacious, and it seemed just like a stadium. Currently, there were several presences within the large hall, and their auras were all rather remarkable. Clearly, they were no ordinary individuals. The ones who could sit in this large hall were either famed practitioners, or those who came from prominent empires in the southwest region of the ancient battlefield. Therefore, being able to obtain a spot in this large hall was a sign of power. At the side of the large hall, 3 figures were seated. Faintly, extremely savage shockwaves rippled from their bodies. The one sitting on the left was a big burly man, who had tattoos all over the upper half of his body, and faintly, a wild aura emerged from him. As he quietly sat on his chair, he looked exactly like a savage beast, and no one dared to underestimate him. On the right was a lady wearing a dark purple dress. Her clean appearance, jet black hair, and slim figure made her a pretty sight in this large hall. In between them was a fairly handsome man dressed in black. He wore a fairly congenial smile on his face, however, the cold glint that occasionally flashed across his eyes made one understand that this man was no saint. Behind the man in black was a fairly familiar figure. Decked in white, he was indeed Shishien, who had previously fought with Lin Dong. It clear that the former was naturally the true leader of Devil Cliff Empire, Shikuan. It seems like the 4th owner of the mysterious ancient key has finally shown up. In the large hall, Shikuan suddenly lifted his head as the congenial smile on his face grew even wider, while his voice rang out in the large hall. The large hall suddenly became much quieter. However, many people had a look of amusement in their eyes. The ones who could sit here were no pushovers, and they naturally did not fear the Devil Cliff Empire unlike other empires. There were only 4 mysterious ancient keys, and no one knew if these keys possessed other properties besides opening the mysterious ancient treasure trove. Nonetheless, if one had a mysterious ancient key, the weight of their words would naturally grow. Therefore, everyone present here wanted a mysterious ancient key. Of course, all 4 mysterious ancient keys currently had an owner, and it was not going to be easy to snatch the keys from the 3 high-rank empires. The cost was simply too great, hence, most of their empires did not plot against them. Therefore, the final mysterious ancient key owner, Lin Dong, naturally became their prime target. However, everyone here knew that Lin Dong had managed to escape unscathed from Shishien. However, this fact did not deter them at all. After all, they were not your usual empires. Oh? Ha, I am curious to find out if that Lin Dong really has 3 heads and 6 limbs. To actually be capable of snatching the mysterious ancient key from your Devil Cliff Empire. The bare torso burly man seated beside Shikuan curiously stared out of the large hall, while his laughter boomed like thunder. You deserve it. When your Devil Cliff Empire got wind about the mysterious ancient key, you did not activate a large party in fear that we would interfere, and instead sent in a bunch of small fry. In the end, you allowed Lin Dong to take advantage of the situation, the lady in a dark purple dress casually said. The Prehistoric Empire and Death Valley Empire did not lose out to the Devil Cliff Empire. Therefore, they dared to speak without restraint. Humph, that kid merely got lucky last time. If he did not rely on the mysterious ancient key to escape, I would have directly captured him. Beside Shikuan, Shishien said with an icy expression on his face. At first, I was worried that he would not have the guts to show up. However, I never expected him to be so daring. Since he has shown up, it's time for him to return the key to its rightful owner. Towards the end, thick killing intent suddenly surfaced in Shishien's eyes. Evidently, news of how Lin Dong managed to escape from him had spread across the entire city, and it had ruined his reputation. Therefore, he had already secretly made up his mind to make Lin Dong experience a fate worse than death after he was captured. Your Devil Cliff Empire already has a mysterious ancient key. Leave this one for the rest of us. As Shishien's words faded, a soft chuckle sounded out in the large hall. Shishien furrowed his brows and was just about to reply, however. Shikuan waved his hands before he smiled and said, "Whoever can get rid of that kid shall be the new owner of the mysterious ancient key." Ha ha, Brother Shikuan is truly generous. Don't worry, that fellow's head will naturally belong to the Devil Cliff Empire. At that time, others will know the consequences of offending your Devil Cliff Empire. Some of them laughed heartily. From their expressions, it looked like they believed capturing Lin Dong and obtaining the mysterious ancient key would be a simple feat. Ha ha. Seems like quite a number of you want my head. However, just as they were laughing, a soft laughter suddenly echoed from outside the large hall and slowly resounded within the large hall. The atmosphere in the large hall instantly froze, before several peculiar gazes turned towards the entrance. The smile on Shikuan's face did not change, and it seemed like he had no intention of lifting his head to look. As he continued to play with the steel ball in his palm, a faint sinister smile hung on his lips. Lin Dong. Behind Shikuan, Shishien's expression instantly darkened as he gnashed his teeth in anger. The large burly man and lady in dark purple also lifted their heads, their gazes somewhat mocking as they stared at the entrance to the large hall. Didn't that fellow know that nearly everyone here was waiting for his arrival? In their opinion, though Lin Dong was from a low-rank empire, the Great Yang Empire, he was quite courageous and insightful. However, he had a slightly exaggerated opinion of his own abilities. Under the stares of the crowd and amidst the sunlight that shined down upon the entrance area, the sounds of footsteps could be heard. Moments later, two figures, one in front and one behind, slowly appeared in the large and spacious hall. The instant these two figures appeared, everyone's attention was instantly focused on them. The ones who had walked into the large hall were naturally the Lin Dong duo. After he walked into the large hall, his attention was cast right at the man wearing black clothes, who was sitting in front of Shishien. From the latter's body, he could sense a vibration that was even more powerful than Shishien. "Kid, we have waited a long time for you. Since you have shown up, surrender your mysterious ancient key." The silent atmosphere in the large hall lasted for a few short moments, before everyone's eyes filled with greed. A man with a vigorous aura took the lead and stood up first. The vibrations that emerged from his body were pretty similar to Laisha. Evidently, this was also a person that had failed the first Nirvana tribulation. This man did things in a decisive fashion. Furthermore, he was keenly aware that there were others who were eyeing Lin Dong's mysterious ancient key. Therefore, in his opinion, speed was of the essence. Hence, right after he spoke, his body had already leapt out as he punched out. Potent streams of yuan power transformed into fists, as they rained down onto Lin Dong. In the face of such a sudden attack, Lin Dong's expression did not change at all. As he waved his palm, a peculiar grayish-black energy wrapped around his arm, before he gently waved it. Boom! A deep sound echoed out inside the large hall. Following which, the crowds were bewildered as they watched that elite practitioner, who had attacked first, easily blown away. His body tore a ditch that was over a dozen meters long on the ground before he finally stabilized himself. A chorus of shocked exclamations stealthily passed through the large hall, as some people's expressions gently changed. After all, some of them did not even possess the ability to send a Nirvana stage practitioner, who had failed a Nirvana tribulation, flying with a single blow. I am not here to deliver the mysterious ancient key. Rather, I want all of you to know that this mysterious ancient key belongs to me. If any of you trying to mess with me, Lin Dong gently clapped his hands, staring right at the Devil Cliff Empire as he chuckled. What a daring dog. Do you think that you possess the qualifications to speak in here? Arrogant. Shishien's face instantly turned grim. Promptly, he revealed a venomous smile before his foot stomped against the ground as he dashed forth. Looks like he could not resist making a move. Lin Dong narrowed his eyes as he stared at Shishien, who was giving off violent shockwaves. However, he gave no indication that he was going to fight back. Instead, he slowly lowered both of his arms. Just as Lin Dong lowered his arms, Little Flame, who had been silently standing behind him, suddenly took a step forward. Meanwhile, an alarming and savage killing intent gushed into his originally dull eyes. "Get lost!" While he shouted, Little Flame punched out, directly clashing against Shishian. This video will end here.